So pretty much any movie or TV show about high school, or I'm guessing real life experience for some of you, involves the lunchroom scene, where a person enters the lunchroom, is trying to figure out, okay, who am I going to sit with? And if that answer is not readily apparent, there might be some wondering, well, if I don't know, I'm not cool enough to sit over here, but if I sit with this person, there's going to be a cost to that. There's going to be a cost to my being associated with this person. Now, I'm not saying that's a great thought to have, but it's honest, right? And it enters the plot of all sorts of different shows and life, that sometimes being associated with someone has a social cost to it. And in today's 5-minute devotional, we'll see that in the middle of this story about a person who is blind, there's a cost to being associated with Jesus that's starting to ramp up. So we're in John chapter 9, verses 18 through 23. I'll read it for you here. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that he now sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, his parents said to him, "Ask him, he is of age." So, we're in the middle of a story. There was a guy who used to sit and beg. He'd been blind his whole life, born that way. Jesus comes along, makes some mud, puts it on his eyes, says, "Hey, go wash off and you can see." And he washes off and he can see. This happened to happen on the Sabbath, which made the religious authorities kind of upset. Now, again, I may have mentioned this before, but as we go through John, you'll sometimes hear a group of people referred to as the Jews. Keep in mind, everyone in John pretty much is Jewish. So it's not like, oh, the Jews are against Jesus. No, it's like the Jews, the religious leaders. Jesus is a Jew, the guy who was blind is a Jew, everybody's Jewish, but the Jews are the ones who are in charge. And so that's who's upset right now. And so they're like, I don't know, maybe this was some kind of a scam and this guy wasn't really blind. Let's talk to his parents. And his parents come in and they say, "Hey, was your son born blind?" They're like, "Yep, he was born blind." They're like, "How does he now see?" They're like, "I don't know." Who healed him so that he could see? They're like, "I don't know, ask him. We don't want anything to do with it." So they're acting really weird, right? They're like sort of afraid of something. Well, what they're afraid of is that these religious leaders had decided that if anyone said that Jesus was the Messiah, that they get kicked out of the synagogue. And the parents were afraid of that. They were like, we're not going to say anything about what happened. You ask him for yourself. All we're going to tell you is that he was blind. Because being kicked out of the synagogue would have been a huge deal. So, I mean, you could imagine the one level of how sad it would be, tragic, heartbreaking, painful, to be kicked out of church, right? So you can never come back here to worship, or not come back within a certain period of time. That would be tragic. Or say, no, kicked out of youth group, can never come back. You'll find another church, probably. You can find another youth group, maybe. But, I mean, what if this was the only place in town? And not only that, but you weren't, like, the people who were here weren't supposed to, like, acknowledge you or really be friends with you anymore. It affects, like, someone's whole life to be kicked out of the synagogue. So, this was a big deal. This was a big threat that was coming. And the religious authorities were using this to try and extract information about this guy and trying to clamp down on anybody who would be associated with Jesus. Now, thankfully, we don't have those kinds of threats in our lives right now about being associated with Jesus. Where we live, where most of us who are watching this live in a society that doesn't do that, though there are places around the world where you can get in big trouble for being associated with Jesus. But there might be other ways. It might be more lunchroom kind of table situations. But there might be a cost to being associated with Jesus, and that's just a reality. And if that's a reality in your life, take comfort that that's been a reality from the very beginning. And if it's not now, it might be someday. But it's part of the deal. But it's certainly still worth it. And we'll see how this keeps going for this guy who was born blind.